What's happening?
Good morning, everybody. We're capping off the first 100-day week with our morning briefing. How does everybody feel? You like the morning briefings? Okay, we do too. That's why we're doing them. It's good to see all of you. I brought a friend out here today who's happy to take your questions. But first, some remarks. At 11 o'clock, President Trump will participate in a National Day of Prayer event where he will invite Americans of all faiths across the country to join him in asking for God's continued blessings over our great country.
Amen.
During the event, the president will sign an executive order establishing
Bro, how can you hate Trump?
a religious liberty commission. Later today, President Trump will travel to the University of Alabama to deliver a commencement address to the graduating class of 2025. Last night, we saw yet again why President Trump is our deal maker in chief. We secured a historic agreement to establish the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund.
The United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Fund. Are we going to pay for the reconstruction of Ukraine? Because I know that BlackRock already has some reconstruction contracts. And in case you guys don't know, a lot of these Middle East conflicts, Syria included, they come with these provisions for American contracting companies to have early contracts for reconstruction. And so the more damage that's done, the more money that these companies can then make on the back end. And it seems like U.S. companies may be bearing the brunt of the reconstruction. I really hope not. But let's see. We did instigate this conflict way past the point, way past the mark by giving, let's just say, additional military equipment to the Ukraine, giving political cover and international backing, and allowing this conflict to get way worse than it should have. I guess we do bear some responsibility, but then I guess at the same time, we bear some responsibility for Gaza as well. So I hope this isn't a double standard. I hope that they're going to stay consistent with this policy all the way through, which means that Gaza gets rebuilt as well on a, but I just don't think that American taxpayer money should be spent on either of these. Europe should be in charge of the reconstruction. The mineral deal, I guess we're putting a China move here where you've lost your right to operate as a sovereign nation. And so we're going to take your mineral wealth. We're going to take your core resources. That way you're subjugated to us in debt in perpetuity. I'm not, this is just the game.
This is a first of its kind economic partnership for the reconstruction and long-term economic success of Ukraine that the United States will greatly benefit from. This partnership represents the United States taking an economic stake in securing a free, peaceful, and sovereign future for Ukraine. This partnership establishes a fund that will receive 50% of royalties, license fees, and other similar payments from natural resource projects in Ukraine. President Trump has been clear from the beginning. 50%. He wants the killing in this brutal war to end. This agreement shows how invested the president is in securing.
50%, what that means is, so we're not getting ripped off. America's not going to be paying for the reconstruction. We get a 50% tariff on all of the mineral activities in the country. What if it's not a U.S. mineral contractor? What if it's a Ukrainian? Do we still get 50%? So I guess if there's any way to look at this, we are getting our money back for the amount that was wasted in Ukraine and all the corruption and all the money that was stolen. We're going to get our money back by them having to work it off through these mineral projects, by either the operations of the mineral projects, supplying jobs and supply chain kind of operational aspects, or just the raw materials themselves. And the sale of the raw materials or the acquisition, we get a percentage. So I guess we're getting our money back for all the shit we wasted in Ukraine. This is crazy. We're going to talk about COVID and Fauci here in a second, because they did change that annoying little COVID-19 website. They changed it, and now they're implicating China. They're implicating Fauci in basically the destruction of the global order. And it's pretty interesting. We got Tulsi Gabbard talking about that next. But we have Caroline Leavitt, and then that fucking sloth, Stephen Miller. If there's somebody that is a comic book character or like a movie, House of Cards, if there was a House of Cards character that is like the fixer, I feel like it's Stephen Miller. So I can't trust him as far as I can throw him. But he didn't say a single lie in this upcoming speech that we're going to be listening to. So let's have Caroline give the president's morning briefing or the president's morning report, whatever they want to call this thing. And then we'll have Stephen Miller break down the changes that have happened within the government. And they're all positive.
Truly lasting peace. To mark President Trump's triumphant first 100 days in office, we've detailed all week how President Trump has been hard at work delivering on the promises he made to the American people. And yesterday, the president once again showcased why he is the most transparent and accessible president in American history when he held his fourth open press cabinet meeting. Every cabinet secretary went into great detail, explaining how their respective agencies are making life better for American families and businesses. And then the president allowed all of you to ask questions on anything you wanted afterwards. One of the main reasons President Trump won nearly 80 million votes, swept all 7 battleground states, and received a resounding mandate from the American public is because of the contrast he presented during the campaign and continues to this day. Everything President Trump's agenda is grounded in one thing: common sense. While the Democrat Party went off the deep end and doubled down on pure craziness, President Trump pledged to restore common sense back to the United States of America. In a little more than 3 months, that's exactly what he's done. He recognized that America is a sovereign nation that cannot survive if it does not protect its territorial borders. So he secured the border in record time and ended the mass invasion of tens of millions of illegal aliens into our homeland. The president knows his top responsibility is ensuring the safety of the American people, which is why he's arresting violent illegal alien invaders in our communities who threaten our public safety. And it's unacceptable to President Trump to allow rampant waste, fraud, and abuse of Americans' precious tax dollars, which is why the president championed a historic DOGE effort that saved nearly $200 billion already. President Trump knows America is blessed with an abundance of liquid gold below our feet in the form of fossil fuels. So he ended Joe Biden's reckless war on American energy and is restoring American energy dominance to lower costs and strengthen our national security. President Trump believes Americans should be free to drive whatever car they want. So he ended Joe Biden's disastrous EV mandate and promoted true consumer choice. President Trump stood up for the Constitution's promise of colorblind equality before the law, so he terminated radical DEI preferencing and federal contracting and directed federal agencies to relentlessly combat private sector discrimination. DEI seeks to divide and pit Americans against each other based on immutable characteristics. President Trump put an end to it. In President Trump's America, individual dignity, hard work, and excellence are the only things that will determine if you get ahead. President Trump is a proud free speech champion, which is why he ended Joe Biden's trampling of free speech rights and the federal government's censorship of American speech on online platforms. The president believes college students have a right to speak their minds and go to school safely. Again, common sense. So he took bold action to protect Jewish American students from harassment by pro-Hamas radicals.
All right. That just pissed me the fuck off. Let's see if we can scrub back. 45, 44. They just said they're trying to protect students' rights to speak their mind and go to school. And then they deported 2 people for talking shit about Israel. That's not even our country. How do you get deported for talking shit about a foreign country, another country? And then they're saying that they're protecting students' rights, but it seems like they're only protecting Jewish students' rights. Hey, let me say this. I have nothing against Jewish people, but we always have, it's the same thing that I had with like the trans issue or whatever. Like we're always making these big deals out of 0.2% of the population. And so we're going to sacrifice one of the most fundamental American ideals of free speech in order to appease a foreign country when the demographic makeup of that country is made up of Jewish people, which makes up less than 0.2% of the global population. So you're gonna like throw away American ideals for less than 0.2% of the like how is that protecting students and their right to free speech? That makes no fucking sense. That's point number 1. That's 10 points from Gryffindor. All right.
On their campuses. And President Trump knows that America's children are our future, and he'll never stop fighting for them.
Bro, if you look the YouTube comments. If you get me kicked off YouTube already, motherfucker, we're getting our momentum back. All right. Don't fuck this up. I just made an objective point about the First Amendment and about the double standard. When I got, don't get me kicked off.
That's why he ended the radical, un-American indoctrination of children by eliminating support for divisive, radical gender ideology and equity ideology, and why the president protected parents' fundamental rights. And lastly, the president believes in fundamental biology. Isn't that something? Which is why he made it the official policy of the United States government that there are only two sexes, male and female. And because men and women are biologically different, President Trump ended the unfair, demeaning practice of forcing women to compete against men in sports and having their private spaces invaded. When President Trump promised a complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense, he meant it. And over the next 100 days, get ready for historic trade deals, budget deals, and peace deals. For more on President Trump's common sense revolution, I will turn it over to our White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Stephen Miller. Stephen, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you, Carol.
The President Trump's common sense policies. And after I've only listened, so we're both going to be listening to this in real time because I haven't seen the whole thing. I watched about 5 minutes of Stephen Miller's speech, and that was enough for me to just want to hop on a live stream and review this thing live. So we're going to be watching this together for the first time. Let's see what a common sense means to this administration.
Fine, great to be up here with you, and great to see so many familiar faces I've had a chance to get to know over a number of years as we gather this morning to continue our celebration of President Trump's unprecedented and historic first 100 days in office, what are without doubt the greatest 100 days to begin any American presidency in the history of this nation. This week, you've heard about the historic actions President Trump has taken to secure our homeland, to secure our sovereignty, to secure our economy and our supply chains and our industrial base. Today, you're also going to hear from me about what President Trump has done to secure our values, our culture, and our way of life from the unwavering assault from the radical left and the communists and the Democrat Party. One of the most significant crises that President Trump inherited.
He said the radical left, the communists, and the Democratic Party. Yo.
Upon taking office was the wave of racial discrimination, so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that have taken over both public sector and private sector entities all across the United States of America. Perhaps the most dramatic example of this is that our air traffic controllers were being hired and promoted based on race and gender, not their ability to conduct our nation's air traffic. I would estimate that probably 90% of Americans would agree with the statement that airline safety should be based on your ability to keep airline safety jobs should be based on your ability to keep planes landing and taking off and flying safely.
All right, common sense initiative is coming back in. Yo, if you guys work in the corporate world, if you guys have that HR people or that HR person or these people in your office that were really, really pushing this DEI stuff, if you have friends that were fired because they might have said something at work or whatever the fuck it is, this is your chance. You should go and find those people and be like, yo, what the fuck was that? And then, you know what I'm saying? Like, those people try to ruin this country piece by piece by bullying people in the workplace. I think it's time that we had a conversation and been like, what the fuck were you trying to do? And then if it's appropriate, get those people the fuck out of there. Because the less of these people that are still in the system, I think the less that we're going to be moving backwards in a way that gets us away from this meritocracy. What Stephen Miller just said is that your surgeon should only be judged on their ability to perform surgery, not anything else. I don't give a fuck if you're blue, green, yellow. I don't care what tribe you're from. I don't care about your ancestry. I mean, that's between you and your family. I don't give a fuck about your family tree. Okay, there's all this rich history in it. Fuck all of it. What I care about is, can you perform the surgery? That's meritocracy. If you disagree with that, you are a danger to society, because the opposite of meritocracy is chaos. It's like you're putting people in air traffic control that aren't good at their job, and then people die. And it's like, oh, but we were just trying to be, what was it called? We were just trying to be tolerant at the cost of 75 lives that are now in the river in DC. So I don't know. I think that if you disagree with this common sense policy, there's something seriously wrong with you. And I think it's time that we address this in the corporate world. because we're kind of brushing it off as like, oh, loonies sometimes get a little too excited and they got too excited. No, no, no. This was the destruction of the fabric of society. So I think there's a conversation that needs to be had.
Not on what demographic box you check. President Trump has ended across the entire federal government all hiring, recruiting, retention, promotion, and training based on race and sex. This includes in our law enforcement agencies. So again, when we took office, even in sensitive law enforcement, national security, and intelligence agencies, we were hiring individuals not in their ability to carry a weapon, not in their ability to keep Americans safe, not in their ability to conduct sensitive intelligence operations, but based upon race and sex. And obviously, that is unacceptable. It's going to be merit-based across the whole federal government. But this wasn't just the federal government. This was the private sector. And this was also, of course, our entire university and education system. So President Trump's Department of Justice, working with other departments and agencies, have made clear that this administration is going to fully enforce Title VI, Title VII, and Title IX of our federal civil rights code. Discrimination based on race and sex is prohibited by law. And this administration will vigorously enforce that. And companies, small or large, that violate plain text of federal statutes will face appropriate financial and other penalties. This administration is not going to let our society devolve into communist woke DEI strangulation. We are going to have a system of merit, which is not just a social and cultural issue, it's an economic issue. When you hire, retain, and recruit based on merit, as President Trump has directed, you advance innovation, you advance growth, you advance investment, you advance job creation, you create the best and safest product for all Americans. When a citizen goes to, say, a hospital in a medical emergency, they don't care what race or sex their doctor or their nurse is. They want the best treatment they can get in that emergency. When they're flying a plane or when they are on an aircraft, they want that pilot to be the best pilot, the safest pilot, not caring what that pilot's race or sex is. This applies across the whole government. In particular, looking at our university system, this administration has opened investigations into universities across the country for violating, and we talk a lot about Supreme Court rulings, universities across this country are in plain and direct violation of the Supreme Court's ruling that affirmative action, as in racial quotas and set-asides, are illegal. Students must be admitted to universities on a color-blind basis. But we have demonstrated through clear evidence that our university system, including our medical schools, and perhaps particularly our medical schools, are engaging in race-based discrimination, racial set-asides, racial quota schemes, and other efforts to evade the Supreme Court's ruling, and again, the plain text of federal statute. So universities are on notice, and universities are already facing the financial consequences.
See, look, if all they're going to do is lose their funding, I think these colleges are going to be fine. I think Harvard's $53 billion endowment that they generate 7-8% on or whatever, I think they're going to be okay. You guys can do the math back in the napkin. 7% returns on a $53 billion endowment. And you ask me if these universities need government money. Now, I will admit that some of the most important innovations that have been made have been through partnerships of government and universities. So if it's a research university like MIT or something that's providing real solutions that we're implementing into medicine, technology, civil engineering, I think that there's grants that should still be given, regardless of their merit, based on, this, whatever the fuck they're saying. You said not nice things, you said naughty things about people that we are protecting, and we're not going to fund cancer research. That's fucking retarded. We shouldn't do that. Now, what we should do is we shouldn't be giving money as like a subsidy to endowments. And by the way, you guys know this, religious institutions and colleges share the same tax exempt status where it's non-taxable. So you're generating 7-8%. You're not even paying long-term capital gains on this endowment. Now I have to double check to see if the endowment is actually part of this non-taxable or this tax exempt status. But now here's the bad side. They're doing this to protect Jewish students, but they're not doing like where was this during BLM? There's like white students getting fucking getting harassed day and night. They didn't give a fuck. And not to say that they should step in either one. I'm not here for preference. I'm here for consistency. I don't give a fuck what side of this you're on. Right? Fuck all sides. You guys know me. I'm a miserable bastard. I don't fuck everybody equally. I'm equal opportunist. But on the flip side of this, I just want to see consistency because if you're going to start applying radical rules, I want them applied across the board. Otherwise, at some point, you're going to have a policy that I don't agree with, and you're going to have a radical, radical sense of confidence with these radical implementations of the law. And you're going to do some shit that's unconstitutional. And then, just like we've seen, they're going to brush it off and be like, well, fuck the courts. It's fuck the courts when we're doing something that the country has mandated the president to do. Let's say deportations. But you can't say fuck the courts because at some point you're going to want to do whatever bill number 816 that I don't agree with, and you're going to say fuck the courts. And that's where society gets to fall apart. So anyways, I want to see consistency. I don't want to see anti-Semitism labeled as a health crisis by the HHS. I want to see RFK do something fucking better than banning Yellow 5. Anyways, let's get back to Stephen Miller. You guys can tell I'm passionate about this country. And what I've been seeing the last 4 years has driven me damn near insane. It's like getting gaslit by a toxic relationship. You don't realize how deep in this shit you were until you're out the other side, until the fog settles, until the dust settles and everything clears and the chips are on the table. And you're like, what the fuck just happened? It was like one big fucking, the magic trick, boop, boop, bop, bop. Next thing you know, you're looking over here and the magic trick's happening over here. And you're like, and then they're lying to you, trying to drive you insane, questioning your own sanity. Now, luckily, I got both feet on the fucking ground and I wasn't swayed in either direction out of my principles and out of my my beliefs. But it really was a tough 4 years of me being against the world, basically. It's saying all the shit that we're now agreeing to, that the COVID was made in a lab and that the masks don't work and that the vaccine shots were rushed through trials with 11 mice studies or whatever. Everything I was saying, I got destroyed for. I lost my job at Merrill Lynch. I lost friends. There's people I still don't talk to this day because of the COVID situation. It's crazy. These people lost their minds. All right. So clearly I'm very passionate about this. I just really hope that this administration is not bullshitting us with preferential, picky, choosy versions of their law and applying consistency.
Of their non-compliance with federal law, the clearest example that we're all familiar with, of course, being.
And yeah, last piece. Trump did have a national prayer day. He said, I don't care what prayer you're going to do, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Christian, Protestant, evangelical. It's a national day of prayer. Regardless, whatever God you pray to him today to guide us forward and to give us the strength. People, that brought a tear to my eye. I don't know what happened to Trump after the assassination attempt, but this man has gotten deeper and deeper with his relationship with God. And before he was seen as the secular confidence, materialistic, kind of hedonistic person, where he's the private jets and the women and the lifestyle and like the billionaire status, etc. I think now, and the womanizer, etc. Now, very clearly, he is a changed man. The wisdom, the attention, and the prioritization of faith in this country is going to be the bedrock that saves the society. You can't fix society with laws, right? If I don't like blue people, or if I don't like green people, or if I don't like yellow people, you're not going to put a piece of paper in my face and say, now you got to like yellow people. That's not how the fuck this works. It works through the nuclear family. It works through having better communities through this love and care for the nuclear family. It starts with your family. Then it goes to the community. Then it goes to your state. Then it goes to your country. Like it all starts at home. And so this attention to faith, before you even get to family, your relationship with faith, or your confidence with yourself and your humility in your understanding of where you are in the universe and all these things, that is the foundation of the bedrock of the nuclear family. Right? Me as a man, if I don't have a great relationship with God and I'm not confident in myself and my vision for the future, my ambition for the future is grounded in something that is higher than me, then I'm always going to fall into temptations. I'm always going to fall into distractions, and I won't be a leader for my family. And so this whole National Day of Faith thing is like, it all starts there. And then you get to be a better father or a better mother or a better sister or a better brother. And then you get to be a better member of your society because you're not a piece of shit. And then you get to be a better, that state, like that state is getting revered compared to other states because from the community level, it's all working out. Then America is revered again as a bastion of good morals, good values, and sticking up for the little guy and all these different things. So National Day of Faith, we haven't seen this in a while. We tried to go full devil worshiping, full satanic with the last 4 years. And I think people are going to say that I'm hyperbolizing. I mean this. I'm dead fucking serious. Satanists took over the country for 4 years. And so this is actually very refreshing for me. Obviously, this is my personal opinion, but this is also my personal fucking channel. And so I'm going to give my personal opinion. Let's get back to Stephen Miller, who could be a character on American Psycho. Look, there we go. Let's go,
Harvard,
Stephen.
which is engaged in repeat, systemic, and sustained violations of federal civil rights law. Another area of civil rights law that we talk about a lot, of course, is Title IX, sex-based discrimination. And this administration ended the Biden administration's policy and the Democrat Party's policy of allowing men into women's sports, men into women's spaces. We are using every single legal and financial tool we have at President Trump's direction to make it clear that schools and universities are and will lose federal funds, as you've seen in Maine, if you allow men to invade women's sports and women's spaces. And this applies to our whole K-12 system. The department.
Let me play this back because this is actually important. Protecting women, very, very big deal, obviously. And the bullshit that's happened in the last 4 years, letting men into women's locker rooms, even though they complain about it. Imagine your daughters, you got a swim team or whatever, and they're all complaining to you like, yo, there's a dude with a dick in our locker room. And you go to the school board and they arrest you at the school board meeting. Guys, put yourself in those shoes for a fucking second. You gotta say Satanists didn't take over. Like, think about that. The girls got kicked off the team. This dude was 480th in the fucking men's division. Went over, pretended to be a chick for like two years. Won first. Took that opportunity away from women who had been working their ass off for 15 years. If that's not satanic, I don't know what the fuck is. That's just evil.
Schools, and perhaps particularly our medical schools, are engaging in race-based discrimination, racial set-asides, racial quota schemes, and other efforts to evade the Supreme Court's ruling, and again, the plain text of federal statute. So universities are on notice, and universities are already facing the financial consequences of their noncompliance with federal law. The clearest example that we're all familiar with, of course, being Harvard, which is engaged in repeat, systemic, and sustained violations of federal civil rights law. Another area of civil rights law that we talk about a lot, of course, is Title IX, sex-based discrimination. And this administration ended the Biden administration's policy and the Democrat Party's policy of allowing men into women's sports, men into women's spaces. We are using every single legal and financial tool we have at President Trump's direction to make it clear that schools and universities are and will lose federal funds, as you've seen in Maine, if you allow men to invade women's sports and women's spaces. And this applies to our whole K-12 system. The Department of Justice is also coordinating with state and local law enforcement to fight child abuse in our school systems. It is child abuse to change a child's gender, particularly if you do not inform the parents. In other words, if a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old goes to school, or a 7-year-old goes to school, and the teacher tries to turn the boy into a girl or the girl into a boy, that is child abuse. And this administration is treating that as child abuse. And it is a gross violation of parental rights. This also includes the administration's message to our hospital systems that they cannot and will not be allowed to use taxpayer dollars to perform chemical castrations and sexual mutilations of children. Castration surgeries, castration drugs, sterilization treatments of children are barbaric. They violate all sound medical ethics. They are completely unwarranted. They harm children for life irreversibly. It is child torture. It is child abuse. It is medical malpractice. And so the Department of Health and Human Services, under the leadership of Bobby Kennedy, as well as the Department of Justice and other departments of this government, are making clear to our medical providers and our hospital systems that you can.
But whoever's in the comments section, Serena Williams they're saying, oh, they're brothers, whatever. No, we're not going to disrespect greatness over here. If you are a great player, if you're Messi, if you're Serena Williams, if you're Venus, if you're Ronaldo, I don't give a fuck. I will not tolerate disrespecting greatness on this chat. If you're a loser, go find another loser stream. There's plenty of those on YouTube, I promise. Over here, we value greatness. We value principles. We're not going to disrespect greatness like Serena Williams and Venus Williams.
Not
So go kick rocks.
use taxpayer dollars to perform these barbaric procedures on America's children. And HHS has systematically eliminated all of the junk, fake science that was produced under the Biden administration, promoting sex changes on children, promoting the idea of sterilizing children. That's been cleaned out. That's been removed, and new guidance is being issued to doctors and hospitals advising them that they cannot perform these horrifying procedures, these irreversible procedures on our nation's children. We are also making clear in our prison system, male prisoners will not be allowed into women's prisons. The Biden
Stop. Like, bro, why does this need to be said out loud? If you guys don't believe the insanity of the toxic relationship of the last 4 years, he just said male prisoners should not be allowed in female prisons. Bro, no shit. I want to find these people that agree with these policies, bro. I want to find these fucking people. I want to talk to a real human who believes in the policies of the last 4 years. I haven't seen a single fucking one of them because they probably hide somewhere in a basement. We need to find these people. I want to have a conversation with someone who believes in this stuff, because there's no way that we allow these people to take over the country. I understand that you could think that men belong in women's prisons. Like, there's a guy that thinks he's a fucking cat somewhere. That's fine. How did we let them take over the country? Where the fuck were the men? Where was I? I let this happen too. Where were the men in this country that allowed this shit to happen? Because people, if we can let fucking lunatics that believe that women belong in men's prisons or men belong in women's prisons to take over this country, imagine what Russia can do to us, or Iran, or any other country. You don't think the Iranians or the Chinese are scarier than these DEI commies? They're definitely scarier. And if we didn't stand up for this, what the fuck? The next person is going to come in, just take the whole country at this point. We might do it. The Char Addict stream should probably do it. Because if men going to women's prisons can get through, and that was what we were allowing to happen, then fuck it. Forex is legal, and I get to arbitrage every single trade in the markets. And I have preferential interest rates, the prime rate at 1%. That's our new mandate.
Administration promoted prison rape by
and Estonians can't play handball. Look, if we're just going to throw out crazy rules, it's like, I love the Estonians. I'm just
putting men into female prisons. That is obviously insane, cruel, and unacceptable. And even though the Democrat Party and Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrat media continue to fight to put men into women's prisons, this administration will not allow that. And will not allow men as well in our K-12 system into women's private spaces and restrooms. We've seen horrifying example after example of young girls being sexually assaulted because school districts have allowed men into women's and girls' private spaces. This administration, President Trump, is at the forefront of protecting women and protecting girls. And nowhere is that clearer than when we are talking about fighting radical gender ideology. This administration is also fighting to get critical race theory out of our school districts. Children will be taught to love America. Children will be taught to be patriots. Children will be taught civic values for schools that want federal taxpayer funding. So as we close the Department of Education and we provide funding to states, we are going to make sure that these funds are not being used to promote communist ideology. For any nation to be successful, it cannot teach its children to hate themselves and to hate their country. So these are a few of the areas in which President Trump has fought the cancerous communist woke culture that was destroying this country, where we were led to believe that men were women, that women were men, that racial discrimination was good, that merit was bad, and that safety and physical security mattered less than the feelings of liberal ideologues. The president has also fought to return the Department of Justice to its core mission of protecting public safety and locking up violent criminals, instead of using the Department of Justice to target conservatives, to target Christians, to target people of faith. The last administration cruelly and shamefully used the power of the Justice Department to go after law-abiding Americans, in particular, Trump supporters, conservatives, and Christians. That persecution has ended. The Department of Justice and the FBI are back in the business of going after bad guys, of going after gangs, of going after criminals, and keeping Americans safe. Let me just conclude before taking questions by noting that when you look at the sweep of the first 100 days, every single crisis that has afflicted America for years, sometimes decades, sometimes generations, this president has fought head on. He has taken on every entrenched power structure and system all across this government, this swamp, this town. That includes, of course, the Doge efforts to slash corrupt, wasteful government spending, graft, and corruption, and to stop billions of taxpayer dollars from going to radical left NGOs. These are left-wing nonprofits that are used to advance illegal immigration, to advance open borders, to advance gender ideology, and to advance all of this insanity that has been turning our country in the wrong direction for so many years. President Trump took head on the trade crisis afflicting this country with the destruction of our manufacturing and industrial base, the shameful betrayal of the American worker by Joe Biden and the globalists that sent all of our supply chains overseas. He took head on the catastrophe of mass, unlimited illegal immigration that was turning us into a failed third world state, and achieved the lowest level of illegal immigration in recorded history without even a close second. He took on the economic crisis afflicting this country by reopening American energy, by defeating inflation, by lowering gas prices, by ending the onslaught and reversing the onslaught of federal regulation, by reopening coal, shale, oil, natural gas, and fighting now for the largest tax cut and reform, and the largest deregulation reform, and the largest energy reform in American history. These are just some of the things that have ushered in the new golden age, along with his fight to restore the peace that we had for 4 years under the previous administration before Joe Biden sunk this planet into bloodshed and war in the Middle East, in Europe, and rising tensions in Asia. President Trump, in every area of conflict around the globe, has been fighting to restore peace, security, stability, harmony. So he inherited an economic catastrophe, a border catastrophe, a public safety catastrophe, and a cultural catastrophe. And in every case, he has reversed those catastrophes and brought America into the new golden age. So I thank you for your time, and I look forward to any questions you have.
So thank you, Stephen. And as always, we'll start with our new media seat today. Chris Bedford from the Blaze Media. Why don't you kick us off?
Thank you very much. Stephen, what is the end goal of the China tariffs right now? Is the idea to open up the Chinese markets through a deal to a better market for exporting American goods to China? Or is it a reconfiguration of global trade in a way that isolates China from free countries?
Go. So China is a unique situation. Obviously, the president has talked at length about what happened to us economically since China's entrance into the World Trade Organization, and the trillions and trillions of dollars of trade deficits that we've racked up with China over the period of that time, and what that's meant for our national security, what that's meant for our economic security, what that's meant for our supply chains. Obviously, right now, the Secretary of the Treasury is in the process of developing a plan that will answer the questions that you're talking about. But the president's goals have been very clear on these points, which is that he is not going to allow China to continue to steal our intellectual property, to continue to illegally dump and subsidize their goods in our markets, to manipulate their currency, to rack up an unsustainable trade deficit. We need to have a trade relationship with China that does not do harm to our nation's economic and national security. And that has to be the guidepost of any objective. At the same time, tariffs will bring significant revenue into this country that will allow us to pursue our dramatic plan of tax cuts and reforms.
Awesome, great. Bloomberg, go ahead.
First, as well, similar to that question, I'm curious, Kevin Hassett went on CNBC this morning, said that they were expecting some sort of news on tariffs at the end of the day. Do you have any insight into that?
I don't want to get ahead of any announcement, but I'll just reiterate that right now, countries from all over the world, because of President Trump's leadership, are desperate and dying to make trade deals with the United States. We're going to evaluate each of those deals, and President Trump is personally involved in making sure that these negotiations serve only one interest, which is the interest of the United States of America. And we'll end up with a deal in these cases where, yes, the other countries obviously will have their own demands and their own interests, but nothing will go into effect that doesn't serve the interests of America and the American people.
Thank you. Stephen, this morning GM is putting a dollar figure on how much the president's tariffs will impact the company. The CEO says tariffs will cost GM between $4 and $5 billion this year. The CEO of Ford says he can't commit to not raising prices because of tariffs. Is the administration open to doing more to give automakers relief?
The question, unfortunately, misses the entire point, which is that U.S. automakers have announced dramatic investments and expansions inside the United States. American auto plants are growing, they're expanding, they're opening new facilities, they're expanding existing facilities that are already in operation, because it is now the case that for the first time in our lives, that American cars receive preference in America's markets. The U.S. auto industry used to control the entire world. I believe the number during the heyday was that 70% of all cars in the world were made in Michigan. And now, of course, we've become a tiny fraction of the global market. And the reason for that is because the United States opened its markets to every single foreign cheater and every single foreign nation that subsidized its goods on the face of the earth. And their markets have been closed to ours. Japan closed their market to our cars. The entire EU closed their market to our cars. South Korea closed their market to our cars. All of the countries I just mentioned have tens of billions of dollars of annual trade deficits in automobiles with the United States. These are supposedly pure nations, nations that have at least a somewhat equivalent per capita GDP. So it is impossible under the terms of fair trade, if you have two nations with similar per capita GDP, to have such uneven trade flows in automobiles. What the president has done with his car tariff, we have the most desirable market in the world, is if you want to sell cars tariff-free, tax-free to our market, your plant has to operate in the United States. The only alternative to that is to have no U.S. automobile industry whatsoever, which is where this was headed, to be clear. If we stayed on this current path, within a few years, there would have been no U.S. automobile industry. And what little was left of it would have been in Mexico, because U.S. auto companies have steadily been shifting their supply chains to Mexico, where they believe it is cheaper to make their products. In reality, it'll be cheaper to make them here because there'll be no tariff for anything made in the United States, and we'll have the cheapest energy and the best regulatory environment in the face of the earth.
But in the meantime, while manufacturing ramps up, American consumers may pay more. Do you agree?
No, not on cars they won't, because again, there's now a massive economic incentive for automobile producers to expand production in the United States, and whatever they make here, there will be no tariff.
We'll go to the back row. Go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. Today, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce released a letter to the Trump administration asking for small business tariff relief. They say that's necessary because in order to save small businesses and to stave off recession. Stephen, is the administration considering small business tax tariff relief?
The relief for small businesses is going to come in the form of the largest tax cut in American history. A tax cut, by the way, that every single Democrat is planning to vote against. They're voting for a tax hike on every middle-class family of about $4,000. The president has made clear that there will be 100%
Man.